This will be a short video introducing the Vietnamese cuisine. Vietnam, officially named the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, is a small country located in Southeast Asia with a population of approximately 92.7 million people. Vietnam is neighboured by a number of other countries including China as well as Laos, Thailand and Cambodia. This presentation has been inspired by Hai, a fictional Vietnamese male living in Australia. Historical events have influenced the culture of Vietnam. From the 1860s to 1945, Vietnam was under French colonial rule. During this time, the French introduced many ingredients to Vietnamese cuisine. The French rule has also given rise to one of Vietnam's most iconic foods, the banh mi. A banh mi sandwich contains a combination of grilled meat, coriander, pickled vegetables and pâté. Prior to this, many years ago, there was a period of Chinese rule lasting about 1,000 years. In this time, the Chinese introduced cooking techniques such as stir-frying and deep-frying, as well as the use of chopsticks. There are a range of commonly consumed foods in Vietnam. Rice is the staple food of the Vietnamese cuisine and contributes 80% of carbohydrate and 40% of protein in the average Vietnamese diet. Additional staple foods include fish and seafood, vegetables, and fruit. Supplementary foods are consumed less often and include meat, fresh herbs, and spices. Food practices in Vietnam differ from region to region. The southern tropical climates draw influence from Thai and Cambodian cuisine and use a wide range of fresh foods and often cook foods for a shorter period of time, while the northern areas with more mild climate draw influence from the Chinese cuisine and eat more warm, hearty foods with longer cooking times. The Vietnamese cuisine is a balancing act. According to tradition, the 5 taste elements being spice, sour, bitter, salt and sweet need to be balanced. The balancing of these flavours is important in creating traditional, light and fragrant meals. The dish's aesthetic is also balanced with colours by attempting to incorporate different colours into all dishes. This concept of balance also extends to warm and cool foods. Duck meat is considered a cool food and as a result is served in summer, whereas chicken is considered a warm food and is eaten in winter. Vietnam is a multi-religion country. Buddhism is the most prevalent religion and what I will be discussing today. A central theme of Buddhism is that one should not harm another. This includes animals. Therefore, Buddhists are quite often vegetarian as animals cannot be consumed without first being harmed. Therefore, there is quite a high prevalence of vegetarianism in Vietnam. Vietnam's major imports are led by soybean meal, followed by corn, coconuts, Brazil nuts and cashews, other nuts, and lastly, wheat. Whereas Vietnam's major export products include coffee, rice, coconuts, Brazil nuts and cashews again, pepper, and processed crustaceans. Vietnam's main agriculture output includes rice. The major rice-growing regions of Vietnam are the Mekong Delta region of the south and the Red River Delta region of the north. The following graphs are sourced from the FAO Stat website and highlight the difference in key commodity consumption between Vietnam and Australia. This graph here is showing the difference between the amount of rice consumed in Vietnam compared to rice consumed in Australia. As you can see, the rice consumption is far higher in Vietnam, with a consumption of 13,253 tonnes in 2013 compared to Australia's 258 tonnes. This result is expected considering rice is the staple crop of Vietnam, whereas Australians are more likely to consume more wheat than rice. This graph shows the differences in vegetable consumption. While both lines on the graph show an increasing trend, it is clear that vegetable consumption is far higher in Vietnam, with a total of 13,049 tonnes consumed in 2013, compared to Australia's 1,473 tonnes. Lastly, this graph highlights the differences in fish and seafood consumption. Again, as you can see, the fish and seafood consumption is much higher in Vietnam, with 2,996 tonnes consumed in 2013 compared to Australia's 609 tonnes. This large difference, again, is expected due to the large amount of seafood consumed in Vietnam, especially in coastal cities, whereas in Australia, we tend to have a lot higher meat intake than seafood intake. Now I will discuss the migration of the Vietnamese to Australia. Prior to the Vietnam War, there were very few Vietnamese people living in Australia. During the war, after the communist north of Vietnam overrun the south, the first wave of migration to Australia occurred after the people of the south were fleeing. On the 26th of April in 1976, the first boatload of adult refugees arrived at Darwin Harbour, which encouraged a great number of arrivals over the following years. In 1981, the amount of Vietnamese-born immigrants living in Australia had significantly increased to 12,000. Since 1976, Australia has become home to a large Vietnamese community with about 185,000 Vietnamese-born people living in Australia at the time of the 2011 census. Within Victoria, a large proportion of the Vietnamese population have settled in the areas surrounding Richmond and Springvale. Vietnamese cuisine is widely appreciated in Australia due to its fresh, fragrant and mild dishes. You will be able to find a Vietnamese restaurant in most suburbs and many restaurants, markets and grocery stores in areas with a large Vietnamese immigrant population. The most popular Vietnamese dishes in Australia are the banh mi, pho, which is a rich rice noodle soup, as well as fresh rice paper rolls and fried spring rolls. The Vietnamese use of fresh herbs and spices in all dishes is also becoming quite prevalent in Australia. Australians are incorporating more fresh herbs and spices into their cooking. Thank you for listening to my presentation.